The 2023-2024 NFL season is set to begin this week on September 7th, this Thursday, where we will embark on the best journey in sports to find out who will be the next Super Bowl champion. This year in particular is feeling especially hazy. The NFL is always unpredictable, there's so many things to account for, but a bunch of teams made some big-time moves during the offseason. The AFC in particular is looking extremely loaded, and it just feels like this year could be quite chaotic. Even so, we're going to try our best to make some meaningless predictions that will probably not even be close to being true. But hey, if they end up being right, I'll look like a genius, so let's give this a shot. Today I'm giving you my beginning of the season NFL Power Rankings teams 1 through 32, and it will also serve as a prediction video of sorts, as where I place these teams is where I predict them to finish by the time this season comes to a close. There's a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. And starting off at the number 32 spot, to the surprise of no one, is the Arizona Cardinals. Collectively, within the NFL fan base, they are considered to be the worst team. Some people even go as far as saying that they're the worst by far. It's up for interpretation, but either way, they are without their star quarterback, Kyler Murray. There's a chance he may not even play at all this year. They seem optimistic he will, but in the end, if he does come back, it won't be till very late into this year, and in reality, it's probably in their best interest for the long-term future to tank and potentially draft the new star quarterback of the league in Caleb Williams, and with another top pick potentially in the works for them because of a previous trade, they might be able to pair him up with Marvin Harrison Jr. So the Cardinals are going to try and tank. That's what they should be doing. They're not going to win a lot of games, and they generally might just go 0-17. At the 31 spot, I'm going with the Indianapolis Colts. I think there's a couple teams you could probably put below them, but I just don't like where the Colts stand. Anthony Richardson, he could be talented, but I think he's a little too raw, and I think in his first season he will struggle, throw a lot of interceptions, turn that ball over, especially with an offensive line that's just not what it used to be, and a pretty weak receiving core overall, arguably the worst in the NFL. The Colts just don't have much of anything outside of a couple of defensive playmakers, and I think with the lack of Jonathan Taylor, plus just the awful ownership that is taking control of this team, the Colts won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Not far behind them at the 30 spot is the Houston Texans. Much like the Colts, they just lack the talent from top to bottom to be super special, and they have a rookie quarterback with a lot of unknowns at a bunch of different positions. They might be somewhat competitive, but it's doubtful it's going to translate into a lot of wins. This is a building block year as they try and find their identities and try and find some people that can step up and maybe be stars someday. The Texans are a few years removed from being anything special, so they're likely in for another tough year, although there may be some bright spots that make you look forward to the future. Into 29th, I'm going with the Carolina Panthers. Much like the Texans and Colts, they aren't super loaded, but I think the difference that makes them a bit more favorable is the fact that they have some veterans on both sides of the ball that can make some good plays, and that defense is a bit underrated in my honest opinion, but it just won't be enough to compete, I feel like. The NFC South is wide open. There's a chance they could end up being a wild card of sorts where they take the world by storm and surprise us, but I'm not exactly sold on Bryce Young yet, and they don't have a lot of those superstar X factors that separate them from some of these other teams, so I just would not trust them to win a lot of games. There's a lot of uncertainties behind them, so it's not really worth it to trust them fully, at least right now. And at 28, we're going with the LA Rams. They seem like a corpse at this point. They got their championship, and now they're dying a slow and painful death. Matt Stafford and Aaron Donald are pretty much the only pieces they have to start the season. Some of the only known names. And who knows what Cooper Kupp's health is looking like. Their defense is very weak outside of Aaron Donald. Super questionable stuff for the Rams. They just feel like they got their championship, they sold their souls, and now they're meant to tank for the foreseeable future. At number 27, I'm going with the Buccaneers. They have a pretty okay team. Defensively, they're still very strong with guys like Vita Vea, Shaq Barrett, and Devin White, and then they have a pretty nasty receiving core as well when healthy. It's just a matter of Baker Mayfield. That's why I'm hesitant to put them higher. It seems like he's doing okay in the preseason from what I've heard recently, but generally his ceiling is not that high at this point in his career. He's washed, he's dealt with a lot of injuries. You can't expect him to be great anymore, but even if he's just okay, that might be enough for the Buccaneers to be hovering around that potential 500 level. The expectations aren't super high, things could fall apart really quickly, but they do have the pieces to be a somewhat respectable team. Number 26, the Vegas Raiders. They're a team that could be somewhat sneaky and get some wins that you maybe wouldn't expect from them because they have the likes of Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams and Max Crosby, but generally this team is not looking too hot. They downgraded from Derek Carr to Jimmy G. He's just an okay, mediocre quarterback at this point in his career, and defensively, outside of Max Crosby, they are an absolute liability. The Raiders should not be expected to win a lot of games. They have one of the harder schedules in the league this year, and this seems like the season where they're going to take a step back. Never, ever trust Josh McDaniels. And at number 25, I have the Washington Commanders. Pretty much how far they can go depends on Sam Howell and if he can be a decent starting quarterback in the NFL. I personally don't trust him all that much. He's not a generational prospect. I haven't heard that much hype about him. He's got a decent receiving core backing him up, but I'm just not expecting the greatness out of him to be clutch when his team needs him to. And also on top of that, while I do think the Commanders are talented, their defense has kind of been overrated the last couple of seasons. They've underachieved massively, and Chase Young can't stay healthy. So my expectations for this team are very low. And at number 24, I have the Atlanta Falcons. In a similar fashion to the Commanders, quarterback is a major question mark with them. Desmond Ridder has a lot of things he has to answer. He's super unproven, and there just hasn't been any real hype around him to suggest that he's going to be anything special at the NFL level. The only thing is with the Falcons is they do have some solid offensive talent. Bijan Robinson could be the next star running back of the NFL. Kyle Pitts is amazing. Drake London's pretty good as well. Defensively, they're a bit underrated as well. They're a good team at home. And on top of it, they do have the easiest schedule by strength this season. So the Falcons could end up having a relatively decent record, but I'm not willing to fully commit to them because of that quarterback situation and how uncertain it feels. Number 23. The Chicago Bears. I'm not exactly sold on these guys just yet. They've been getting a lot of hype during the offseason, and it's understandable why, because Justin Fields finally has some help with DJ Moore, amongst other people. That run game should be pretty strong too. But Justin Fields isn't exactly proven when it comes to throwing the football just yet. He is not an elite passer. That is something he has to prove before the Bears can actually be legitimate. And on top of it, that defense is still kind of suspect in my opinion. I think they will be a competitive team and that Justin Fields will look better, but I'm not sure if it'll be enough to be anything more than mediocre. Number 22, the Green Bay Packers. I believe they will finish slightly above their little brothers, so to speak, and it's mostly because they have a pretty talented team overall. Defensively, a very respectable unit. They've got some stars over there for sure. And on offense, I like that they have Christian Watson and Aaron Jones. It really just depends on Jordan Love when it comes to how far the Packers can go, just like with a lot of these other teams I've been talking about so far. Jordan Love, he has shown some flashes, but we haven't seen him be a true starter just yet, and it's because of that there's reason to be skeptical. He seems confident, the Packers org is confident in him as well, but it seems unlikely the Packers are going to luck into another excellent quarterback. He doesn't need to be excellent for them to be anything amazing, but if he's not excellent, it is doubtful that they're going to be a top-level team. Number 21, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are a weird one. They very well could be a lot higher as they're well coached. They play in the AFC South, which isn't exactly impressive, but there's just something about them that feels off. Ryan Tannehill, health concerns could be in the air for him. He's another year older as well. Their backup quarterback situation is not looking good. They have Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, which is promising, but those are pretty much the only offensive weapons that they have right now. And if things go wrong, this Titans team is going to crumble. That defense is a little suspect in my opinion. There aren't a lot of recognizable names. It feels like the Titans are going to take a step back. I felt like last year kind of boomed them and that this is now the Jaguars division. Maybe I'm wrong, but the Titans just feel okay. They have a couple of decent playmakers, but you need more than that if you want to be a contender. Number 20, the New England Patriots. Another team that I don't feel super good about putting this low, but I felt like I had no choice. The Patriots, just because of their defense and Bill Belichick alone, always gives them a chance to be competitive and be in contention to make the playoffs, or at least hover around that 500 mark. But this season, they could end up taking a step back, and I say that for two reasons. One, They have one of the hardest schedules in the league, and they play in a very loaded AFC East where they genuinely might be the worst team in that division. I think in most people's eyes they are. And on top of that, their offense is still rather suspect. Mac Jones needs to take a big step forward. They don't exactly have any star wide receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster's the best they have, and apparently he could get injured literally at any time. The running back core is okay, but overall, I don't think it's enough to compete in a very loaded AFC, and this is the season where Bill Belichick might end up coaching his last season as a Patriot. Number 19, the Denver Broncos. This one I don't feel too good about. This is probably one of the hardest teams to rank in my opinion. The Broncos have a lot of talent, and they got a much better coach this season, even if Sean Payton hasn't coached in years, and Russell Wilson is also overdue for a bounce back year, and that defense is pretty strong and should be able to keep them in some games. But offensively, they may not do too hot, even if they have a better coach and if Russell Wilson plays better, because their wide receiving core does not look too hot right now, and it is full of injuries that just might cost them from making the playoffs this season. And on top of that, they play in a pretty loaded division, so it's going to be a challenge for the Broncos to be good. They'll certainly be better than last year, not that it's saying much, but this idea that they'll be a playoff team kind of seems a little far-fetched to me. I think they'll be more competitive, they'll be more fun to watch, but they're going to fall short because that offense is maybe a bit too weak to compete in any kind of shootout. Number 18, the Cleveland Browns. I'll be honest, I've seen a lot of people rating them super highly this year, and I just don't get the hype. I understand they are probably one of the more talented rosters out there, but you're pretty much banking on Deshaun Watson returning to form for this team to be competitive and to realize their potential, and in my opinion, that's just too much of a risk. Are we going to forget that Deshaun Watson looked terrible last year, just incredibly washed up? I get that he could play better this season after having more time to gel with his team, but after all the stuff that happened with him and the fact that he got this fat paycheck, I just don't see him ever being the same player ever again. He might be better than he was at the end of last year, and he could be a decent enough quarterback to sneak them into like a wild card spot, let's say, but anything more and I think you're reaching. Number 17. The New York Giants. This could be a team that I am massively reaching on, as they are in a really tough division with the Cowboys and the Eagles, and they have one of the hardest schedules in the league this year, and you're pretty much banking on Daniel Jones showing major improvement after getting the big contract that you paid him during the offseason. And that's a big risk, because as far as I'm concerned, Daniel Jones hasn't proved anything just yet. He looked better last year, but that was mostly because he was hesitating with the ball and limiting those mistakes. Now he needs to be a quarterback that can actually carry the game with his arm, and I don't know if he can do that. There's a lot of pressure on him, especially to try and justify that big contract that he was paid. Now, to be fair, the Giants do have some strengths, and apparently they have been pretty confident during the offseason. It seems like they're heading in the right direction under Brian Daboll. The future's bright for them. He's an excellent coach, and he has a great staff over there, and I think adding in Darren Waller and getting some more receivers in case the injury bug hits them, and the fact that the offensive line could be a bit better are all good things that indicate the Giants could be a strong, resilient team, and I even think they're going to pull off a couple of big upsets this year, but in the end, I think they will fall short, and they'll be 8th place in the NFC and just miss out on the playoffs. Number 16, the Pittsburgh Steelers, baby. I'm super high on the Steelers this year. I just have this feeling they're going to take another step in the right direction. They haven't done anything to show us that. Well, that's just my gut feeling. Even last year with a rookie Kenny Pickett and with TJ Watt having the injury bug, they still managed to be a pretty competitive team and hover around that 500 level. Mike Tomlin has still not had a losing season in the NFL. He's one of the best coaches in the league to this day. And I think that Kenny Pickett and George Pickens are going to take the next step and become a pretty dangerous offense. This Steelers offense could surprise some people. And on top of that defense being well respected with TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick and whatnot, the Steelers could end up sneaking into the playoffs. I don't know if they will, but I think they'll be around that level. They could be above 500. If they could do it with a rookie Kenny Pickett, I think this year with his confidence clearly being higher, that the Steelers are going to pull off some big time upsets. Number 15. The New Orleans Saints. They're not necessarily better than some of the other teams I just recently mentioned, but due to them being in the NFC South, I do believe their record's going to be pretty good. Derek Carr joining there is going to help out with the quarterback problems. Their offense should be a lot more explosive, especially when Alvin Kamara returns from his suspension. And on top of that, that defense does go under the radar sometimes with Cam Jordan and Marshawn Lattimore and whatnot. The Saints are a pretty respectable team. I think they're good and that they're going to win their division for sure, and that they may even win like 10 to 11 games because of that schedule. They're looking pretty good, and I think some people sleep on them. Number 14, the Minnesota Vikings. Just because of that offense alone, you can never count these guys out, and they can be competitive even against some of the top-level teams in the league. Kirk Cousins may not be an elite quarterback per se, but throwing balls to Justin Jefferson kind of makes up for that. This dude is literally a god amongst men, and he genuinely might have an even better season this year than he did last year. And on top of that, they've got a new star wideout in Jordan Addison as well. That offense is looking super scary, super quick. Kirk Cousins is going to get like 5,000 yards in his sleep. They'll be in shootouts with a lot of teams, and it could be in a similar light to last year, where they're either winning or losing games in super close fashion. But the thing with the Vikings that holds them back is definitely that defense. It is still suspect at best. It is a major weakness, and because of that, I think the Vikings are in a situation where if they're not putting up a ton of points every game, they're likely going to lose. Number 13, the Detroit Lions. That's right, we're going all in on the Lions hype. I am predicting them to win the NFC North and make the playoffs this season. They got super close last year. They've been developing at a pretty quick rate. Jared Goff's confidence is through the roof. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got a new weapon at running back. They're going to do some crazy things. It's going to be an amazing season for this team. I don't know if they're going to be fantastic per se, because their defense, much like the Vikings, is super suspect, but they're on the rise. Their confidence is going through the roof. And I think after last year that they were able to prove to themselves they can be in that playoff race, that this year they will push themselves over that line, and they will get there. That offense is going to win them a lot of shootouts. I think they're going to be what the Vikings were last year in a way, where they're clutching out a lot of super close victories, and their record is maybe a bit inflated because of it. You're not expecting them to go to the Super Bowl or anything, but this Lions team is going to win a decent number of games, and they're going to upset some good teams. I promise you. Number 12, the New York Jets. This is a team that's definitely worth watching and being excited about. Jets fans should be feeling pretty pumped as you solved the one issue that was holding you back from making the playoffs last year. You upgraded your quarterback position, and you did so in a big way by getting Aaron Rodgers, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Just having him is going to make this team's ceiling go way up. That offense will be way more consistent, and you're going to win a lot more games. And he's got the most weapons he's had in years, with the reigning offensive rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson. You got Breece Hall returning from injury, plus Dalvin Cook. The Jets are looking pretty good on that side of the ball, and their defense is also insanely good. That's honestly the strong point of this team, with guys like Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. However, I'm not fully willing to go all the way with the Jets and say that they'll be a top team. I think they'll be like a wild card team in the playoffs, but there's just a risk with the Jets and with Aaron Rodgers. There's so much that can go wrong with this combination, and I don't think some people understand that. All it takes is one little thing to set Aaron Rodgers off. He's been a drama queen the last couple of seasons. Yeah, he's happy with the Jets. They seem like they're fully investing in him. But if one little thing makes him get upset, he's going to explode on that New York media, and then they're going to press him, and things could get even worse. He could start complaining. I wouldn't doubt it. He definitely has it in him. Plus, it's the Jets. Things always go wrong with the Jets. This season feels like it should be different, but you can never count out that curse. Just end the season is always a very real thing to look out for. Number 11, the Jacksonville Jaguars. My confidence in the Jags this season is relatively high. I, for one, think they're going to take their division by storm and be the clear-cut leaders in the way that the Titans used to be a couple of years ago. Trevor Lawrence in his third season, I believe, will take another great step in the right direction. In his first year under Doug Peterson, he looked like a completely different guy. He seems a lot more confident, and now he has another weapon in his arsenal in Calvin Ridley, who has looked extremely sharp this offseason and looks like he's ready to go on a tear after missing the previous NFL season from his suspension. This Jags offense is super quick with him and Evan Ingram, as well as Christian Kirk. This Jaguars offense is super explosive. They could break out a lot of big plays this season. They've got a good ground game as well. Their defense is decent. It can get the job done. I'm expecting the Jaguars to do some great things this season and potentially even win another playoff game. Number 10. The Seattle Seahawks. I am all in on the Seahawks this season. I am a firm believer in the Geno Smith redemption arc. Some people are saying he's going to fall off and not do what he did last year, but I say why not? He's aging like a fine wine. He's finally finding his confidence. He finally found his opportunity where he fits in, and he's going to make the most of it just considering how bad his career started. Just look at the weapons this veteran has to work with. That receiving core is even better than it was last year, and during this offseason, they drafted super well, and they brought back Bobby Wagner, and they have Pete Carroll, who is a legendary coach. The Seahawks have everything they need to go on a run again, and they play in a weak NFC where they could very easily squeeze out 10 plus games and be a wild card team, and who knows, maybe they'll even give the 49ers a run for their money. That's how confident I am in the Seattle Seahawks this year. Anyway, moving on to number 9, I have the Miami Dolphins. This one is a scary one, as everything basically depends on Tua staying healthy. If this guy goes down, they're absolutely screwed. They stand zero chance, but if he can stay healthy, the upside is tremendous with them. We saw flashes of it last year before he got hurt. Their offense is ridiculous. They can put up points in bunches in just one quarter, make big comebacks, no lead is safe from them. They've got one of the best wide receiver duos in the game, if not the best, with Tyreek Hill and with Jalen Waddle. And when Jalen Ramsey comes back from injury, him and Xavier Howard should be able to shut down literally anything that comes their way. The Dolphins play in a tough division for sure. The AFC is also no joke. But they have the tools, they have the offense in a very passing-dominated league to go super far. They have all of that figured out. Literally, as long as Tua and those receivers are on the field, they have a chance to win pretty much any game they're in this season. They're decent on both sides of the ball. Their coach has a good grasp of the game and how to get the most out of their guys. So I'm expecting the Dolphins to do some great things. But again, it comes with an asterisk as it all depends on Tua's health. Speaking of great offenses, at my 8th spot is the LA Chargers. They may be a bunch of chokers, but man is this team dangerous. Justin Herbert just got a fat contract during the offseason and is arguably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL currently. They've got a solid passing game with him, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen, and I think when healthy, this Chargers defense could provide some good stops with people like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack on the edge, and when healthy, we know that JC Jackson can be a ball hawk. The Chargers on paper could be one of the scariest teams in the NFL this season. There's a bunch of ifs when it comes to health and whether or not they can stop choking, but in general, they have all of the pieces, plus the franchise quarterback, to most definitely be in playoff contention and maybe even steal their division away if the Chiefs run into some bad luck. Number 7, the Baltimore Ravens. We're going all in on the Lamar Jackson hype train this season. I believe now that he's gotten paid and that he's happier and he's got more wide receivers to throw to, that he's going to look the best he has in years. OBJ and Zay Flowers is nothing to write home about, but they're certainly better than what he was working with last year, plus Mark Andrews on top of it, in a solid run game. And defensively, they are a bit underrated. I think the Ravens are a pretty well-balanced team. They're well coached, and if they can stay healthy, they're going to be in contention to make the playoffs. Even with Lamar hurt last year, they still made it. So if he can stay on the field for most of this year and just not get that injury bug that always seems to come his way, the Ravens will be a contender for sure. They have all the pieces needed, and I think that Zay Flowers is going to be a nice breakout piece for them. I'm excited to watch the Ravens. I think they're going to be pretty good. I don't know if they're going to win the AFC North, but it seems like they're in firm contention to be a wild card team. Number 6, the Dallas Cowboys. Generally, still one of the most talented teams in football, despite the doubts and the meme of them never actually doing anything. This team is super loaded from top to bottom. That defense very well might be the best in the league, with Micah Parsons there leading the way. It's a super strong unit that's going to keep them in most games this season. And on top of it, while there are doubts about Dak, he still is a decent quarterback. He's overdue for a bounce back year, especially with a lot of pressure on him coming from from Trey Lance being traded to the team. I think he's going to thrive under that pressure, and while not necessarily playing at an elite level, I think he'll play better than last year, and that should be enough to put the Cowboys in a better position overall, especially with a strong receiving core. Adding Brandon Cooks to the mix with CeeDee Lamb, they've got a bit of everything on this team. It's super well balanced, and you just expect them to still be what they've been the last handful of years. Number 5, the San Francisco 49ers. Oh boy, the age-old question on if they can actually go all the way because of that QB situation. Can Brock Purdy improve? Can he ever be even the same guy he was before after injuries? And if so, if he's not, could Sam Darnold even lead him all the way? It doesn't seem like it. I think that's ultimately the thing that keeps the 49ers from being in that top-tier contender conversation. But even so, they should still be one of the best teams in the league, even if their QB struggles, because defensively, they're arguably the best out there, with Nick Bosa leading the way. It's extremely difficult to stop them on that side of the ball. And the QBs also have a lot of help on the offensive side, with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. They just have a lot of help to make any young or uninspiring or unproven quarterback do well enough to succeed. They don't need a star quarterback to go all the way. Clearly, they've shown that throughout the last handful of years. They just need someone that gets the job done, and in their situation, I think they'll figure it out. The Niners will be a threat, and all it takes is one really solid performance for them to suddenly make it to the Super Bowl. Number 4, the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, what is there to say that hasn't already been said about these guys? They've gone to 2 straight AFC championship games. They're capable of toppling the Chiefs and the Bills. They've already done it before. They've basically proven everything except getting that championship ring at this point. They have one of the best offenses out there. When healthy, they have the best wide receiver trio. Joe Burrow's one of the top quarterbacks. Although the one thing that maybe worries Bengals fans is that his injury status is a bit under wraps, and that could end up derailing their season if things aren't handled very carefully. So that's something to keep in mind and to monitor. But generally, the Bengals have everything they need to make a deep run. They have all the tools necessary and all of the proven feats to show you that they can make it to the big dance. Now it's just about executing, finishing the job, and staying healthy. Starting off the top 3 is the Buffalo Bills. There's a lot of concerns with these guys, and understandably so. They choked yet again. Their window is starting to close. Tempers are clearly starting to flare over there. But in my opinion, they're about to have a breakthrough. All of this pressure and these frustrations and knowing what's on the line here is going to take them to even greater heights. And this feels like it actually might be the year where they end up going to the Super Bowl. It's a bold claim just knowing all of the failures they've had so far, but pressure can do stuff to you. And I think Josh Allen is not going to sit there and take this. He knows the mistakes he did last year with the red zone interceptions, and I think he's going to clean that up and have maybe his best season yet. Him and Stephon Diggs are going to lock in. I can almost guarantee that. There's a risk that things are going to explode in their faces, but this just feels like the year where they're going to let all of that adversity flow into them and give them the power to move on forward. And at number 2, and in my opinion, the number 1 seed in the AFC this season, the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no surprises here at all. They're just coming off of a Super Bowl. They're in some of the best shape possible. They have the best player in the league in Patrick Mahomes. They've got Andy Reid. They can do anything so long as they have that duo. Literally, it does not matter who's around them. So long as they got Mahomes and Kelsey, pretty much anything is winnable. They always make the magic happen. Every time you count them out, they find a way around it. They're going to do great as they always do. Even if they're not the top seed, they'll be in the playoffs for sure. They should be winning their division, barring any disasters. There is a bit of a concern with Chris Jones sitting out for now. That makes their defense a bit worse, and that could end up biting them if they can't agree to a deal. But generally, the Chiefs are going to be there because they have Mahomes. You can't count them out. They're the defending champs. They've won 2 Super Bowls already, and there is a good chance they're going to win yet again. And finally, at number 1, and my top seed in the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles, aka the Super Bowl runner-ups. Listen, I think this is the year where the Eagles go all the way. Typically, whenever they go to the Super Bowl, the next year they just aren't as good, but I think they're about to break that trend. As in my opinion, the Eagles are without a doubt the deepest, most talented team in the NFL. Offensively, they can only get better realistically as Jalen Hurts' confidence continues to grow and Devontae Smith continues to develop. They've got a strong run game, arguably the best O-line in the NFL by a good margin. They have everything figured out over there. They're totally dominant on that side of the ball. Their defensive line and pass rush is going to be extremely potent still with Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, and now, of course, their new guy, Jalen Carter, who they absolutely snagged in the draft and apparently is beasting and feasting right now and just might be the star, or I should say, the new star defensive tackle of the NFL. Him and Fletcher Cox together is going to cause some problems in that interior. And on the outside, think about all of the insane pass rushers they have that can also get like 10 plus sacks in a season. Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, you still got Brandon Graham there. The Eagles are absolutely insane when it comes to that defensive line. Their linebacking core, maybe not the best when it comes to the middle, and their secondary is maybe a bit shaky at safety, but they still have Darius Slay and James Bradbury who are pretty shut down. So the Eagles on both sides of the ball could be top tier still. I see no reason why they wouldn't be. I just think they have so many good players in place, even on the bench. Just their rotation is ridiculous. They can put in a fresh guy who is starter level on literally any other team. It's just insane, especially on that defensive side of the ball. How many weapons they have at their disposal really is not fair. Even their backups are going to get a bunch of big plays. So I don't know what anybody's going to do to stop that, especially in a weak NFC. I see no reason why the Eagles will not be the most dominant team by far over there. They're just better than everybody else when they're healthy. Why wouldn't they be? In my opinion, because of how consistent and deep they are, they're going to go back to the Super Bowl, and this time they're going to finish the job. The Eagles are my number one team in the NFL, and I believe they will be our 2023-2024 Super Bowl champions. And that's going to do it for my preseason power rankings. Let me know your thoughts on my rankings, as well as what your rankings are looking like down in the comments below. Let me know who you think is being slept on this year. And of course, until the next one, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more NFL content.